latest that has come in from the troubled island nation of Sri Lanka, where Gotabaya Rajapaksa has now been forced to lift the state of emergency that he had imposed just 5 days earlier. Remember, the emergency had been put in place to quell the protests over the island nation's crippling economic crisis. But the anti-Rajapaksa demonstrations have continued ever since unabated. Now, Rajapaksa is facing a series of setbacks, and that, of course, forced him to revoke the emergency rule ordinance that had gone into effect last Friday. A gazette was issued late on Tuesday, and the move is clearly aimed at avoiding a vote on the extraordinary laws in the parliament. The Gotabaya Rajapaksa's once powerful ruling coalition is in a complete state of turmoil after a string of defections. Dozens of lawmakers have walked out of the ruling coalition. For the lawmakers that walked out of the coalition, they're now independent lawmakers, and there's been no vote count yet. But this could, of course, make decision-making extremely challenging in the House. And also what is interesting is that the Finance Minister, Ali Sabri, who was appointed just a day ago, has also resigned. So what are the next possible steps for Rajapaksa? Now, if the Rajapaksa government loses its majority in the parliament, then this could, of course, lead to the appointment of a new Prime Minister or also snap parliamentary elections in the country. If the government loses its majority, the opposition can also bring in a vote of no confidence. But it is unlikely that this will happen immediately. If a vote of no confidence is adopted, then the President could, of course, appoint a new Prime Minister. And the opposition can also table a resolution to dissolve the parliament altogether. This would, of course, mean snap elections for the island nation ahead of the scheduled polls that were earlier slated to be held in 2025. Remember, Sri Lanka has been plagued with unprecedented shortages of food and fuel, along with record inflation and complete blackouts. And this, of course, has inflicted widespread misery on the common people in the country. The shortages have been triggered by several factors. One of them, of course, is very poor financial management on the part of the Rajapaksas. There's been a lack of foreign exchange for import. The crisis is, of course, worsening ahead of the crucial talks that are scheduled to take place with the International Monetary Fund for a loan program. Public unrest has surged. The ruling family's handling of the debt-laden economy has, of course, not gone down well with the public. There are street demonstrations that began last month that have intensified in recent days. Now, on Tuesday, dozens of protesters gathered near the residence of the Prime Minister in the capital. University students chanted anti-government slogans and also waved placards calling for the country's president to go back home immediately. So the slogans that these university students were chanting were "Gota, go home." The Sri Lankan police, of course, resorted to anti-riot measures. It resorted to using tear gas and water cannons to disperse the protesters who were calling for their demands to be at least heard from the government.
They are a cancer to this country. None of these people are depending on them. We are doing our job. Majority of us are corporate sector or doing our own business. All what we want is a peaceful country. We don't want any other solution. Just Rajapaksa should get out of this country and they should bring back all the money that they robbed.
මේ තත්ත්වය ඇතුලේ මේ දේවල් මර්ධනය කරන්න මේගොල්ලෝ බැටන් පොළු කඳුළු ගෑස් භාවිතා කරලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ආණ්ඩුවේ මාත්තුන්ට අපි මතක් කරන්න කැමතියි. ඕගොල්ලෝ බැටන් පොළු වලින් නම් අපිව මර්ධනය කරන්න හදන්නේ. කඳුළු ගෑස් වලින් නම් ඕගොල්ලෝ අපිව මර්ධනය කරන්න හදන්නේ. ඕගොල්ලන්ට වැරදිලා මාත්‍යෝ. ඒ වගේම අවසාන වශයෙන් මතක් කරන්න කැමතියි මේ අපි ගත්ත ඉස්සරහට ගත්ත අඩිය අපි කිසිම වෙලාවක ඉස්සරහ පස්සට තියන්නේ නැහැ.
All right, so this is a state of unrest that is boiling over across Sri Lanka, predominantly precipitated due to the acute financial crisis that Sri Lanka has been plunged into. And to give us more updates in terms of what's in fact happening in Sri Lanka, we are joined in by our correspondent, Dasuni Athauda, who is joining us live from Colombo. Now, Dasuni, we've seen some extraordinary measures that have been taken by the government. We saw a state of emergency that was imposed last Friday and late night yesterday. The Sri Lankan president also revoked the emergency order. What is he trying to do here?
Well, good morning, everyone. So, yes, we've had a lot of developments overnight. And one of the key developments is that the emergency regulations that the president put forward was lifted via a Gazette notification overnight. Now, this might mean that the president was aware that this would not have been passed in Parliament, especially given the fact that today and tomorrow there is a special debate in place in Parliament during its regular sittings to discuss the current crisis. Now, we must keep in mind that this was an economic crisis that has rapidly turned into a political crisis, and the people and even the governing faction is rapidly trying to look for solutions right now.
Now, at this point of time, quite clearly, not a lot of people, even within the Rajapaksa administration, are convinced that their president has a grip on what he's doing. The finance minister who was appointed resigned in less than 24 hours. So does this mean that the Rajapaksa administration is in complete disarray?
It does appear so in certain instances, and it is quite alarming when you have a temporary cabinet and you appoint a finance minister, and mere 24 hours after his appointment, he resigns. And as of now, we still do not have a finance minister, and we are expecting the announcement of a new finance minister, hopefully today, given the fact that Sri Lanka is scheduled to hold talks with the IMF, and the fact that we do not have a finance minister as of right now is quite alarming.
And also what is interesting that the president has virtually dissolved his cabinet and he's looking to form a sort of a unity government within the parliament. Is the opposition willing to play ball with the president?
Absolutely not. The opposition has been vehemently opposing this unity government option that the president has been proposing for days on end now. And yesterday in Parliament as well, we did see opposition lawmakers sort of stand their ground and say that we do not wish to work with the SLPP-led government.
And also, the crisis, the financial crisis, and also the acute shortage of food and fuel and other things have been going on for several weeks now in Sri Lanka, which has resulted in a lot of street protests. Now, has the government been trying to do anything that would actually assuage, some of the concerns that people have, especially in terms of getting access to simple things like fuel and power? And has the government been succeeding?
As of right now, we still do have power cuts here in the country that exceed more than 5 to 6 hours per day. So which I think that in itself is the biggest inconvenience that the people are facing right now, not having power to do their day-to-day lives. And on top of that, when you have to stand in line to buy things as gas or fuel, that adds to your worries and your frustrations. And people right now, more than standing in line, are sort of voicing their frustration and anger through forms of protest, which is a trend that we've been monitoring the past few days. The protests don't seem to be stopping. In fact, I feel like it only seems to be increasing at this point.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Suni Thado, for joining us from Colombo and getting us all those updates. We'll, of course, come back to you as more details emerge in the story. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.